Couch of Sound Legacy is joining us to discuss with us the impact of storytelling on one's legacy and within family networks.
Yeah, I'm all mic'd up. Thanks.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. Everybody. That was not as terse an intro as I thought it might have been. Is this too echoey? Got a lot of feedback? Sound matters to me. Okay, so yeah, Sound Legacy. We help people tell their life stories. It is a tremendous honor to be able to do that. And I know I come to meetings like this enough where I know, look, there's going to be just a portion of you that are going to check out. I get it. I have sometimes a hard time concentrating myself, but I'm going to give you a task. If you're this sort of check out type, at the end of this, I'm going to offer, I'm looking for a tight five. Somebody to tell me a story that focuses on something, you did the wrong thing. You did something incorrect, but it worked out okay. So did something bad, it worked out. If you're going to be checking out, work on your tight five. I'll pick somebody at the end. And I'm going to tell you a couple stories first. How I got so radicalized as to think I could tell stories for a living and help other people do that. And it started with my mom. Anybody in here a hospice nurse? I heard a couple of them. How many hospice people we have? We got 1, 2. My mother was a hospice nurse her entire career. From the age of like 19, 20, she worked into her 70s, a very long career. So when she came to me, and as all radicalization stories go, there's a podcast involved. I was hosting a podcast traveling around North America, helping people tell their stories. And my mom said, hey, there's one I really want you to tell. It's my brother. And I could hear the pain in my mom's voice asking me to do this. I was like, well, yeah, what's going on? Pancreatic cancer. My uncle was 84 years old and just had a long, amazing life behind him and really wanted to stick around. He was not ready to go. So I said, yes. I went to Colorado and collected that story. Collect sounds worse than I'd hoped. But I sat with my uncle, who I had not seen in 30 years. Real close family. Ostensibly a stranger, I connect with my uncle, and we sat for 3 days in his basement, surrounded by just the artifacts of this man's life. He told me an incredible story. But before we sat down to record, I'm setting up all this equipment. He's like, what's all this? It's like, these are mics. We're gonna record. He said, I thought you were just gonna write it down. Like, I could, but I'd rather. I think everybody's gonna want to hear your voice. He's like, I don't know about this. I don't know. He really wanted to bail right then, at the first moment. So an insight came to me, and I looked at the microphone in a different way. Just in that moment, I was like, this is the ear of a future person. It's the only way that you're gonna be able to connect in a visceral way with someone who may not even exist yet. So give it some thought. It didn't take any thought. He said, okay, I'll do it. So we sat for 3 days, told me, just an amazing story about his life. And, I'm looking across the table at this man who has the same eyes as my mother, same color, same shape, and he's dying, so that's impactful. That's going to sit in you. And I'm every night I'm trying to sleep. I can't sleep and thinking about the shape of the thing I wanted to create for my uncle and for his family. I wanted musical cues and all this stuff and the subtlety. So I go to him, I'm like, all right, Uncle Jim, this is what I want to do. Here's the shape of the thing. He's like, just promise me I never have to hear this thing. I'm like, okay, no problem. And I kept my promise. He passed away like 4 months later. And so I got to work. I started editing, and I made this thing that I am still today, even though I've gotten a lot more practice at this, incredibly proud of. And I was invited to the funeral, and I gave it to my mom, and I gave it to my aunt, and to my cousins, and it got passed around the family, and it was a reaction so profound, not because of anything that I did, but just to see them reacting to their dad, disagreeing with the story. The fish was never that big, I didn't say that, all that stuff, hearing his voice, watching the types. I'm sure you guys know, you're caring, thoughtful, soulful people. You've seen the different kinds of tears. The kinds of tears that came from my family were like revelatory. And I knew right then that's how I got radicalized. That's why I feel like I should be out here helping people tell their stories. So that's my origin story. Went a little long. We're going to talk about another story that I heard from my uncle that helped me get better at what I'm doing. inaccuracies notwithstanding. So I grew up in the South, and not San Diego, like Mississippi South. That comes with a bit of an apology. I just was born there, but it's an all right place. Anyhow, my family is they're of a different stock than you might be used to, and I heard these stories from my mother originally about my grandfather, Howard, who was charitably, you might say, a bit of a fibber. Realistically, they would say he's just full of it. But I was told by my mom that he was a degenerate gambler and got in big trouble with the mafia and owed money that had to be paid back pronto. And so, like any resourceful degenerate gambler, my grandfather said, pivot, and robbed a bank. Walked into a bank with a pistol and a set of demands and walked out with cash, paid the debt off. The threats to my family, which, were pretty scary, went away. And you'd think that'd be the end of the story, but I'm also kind of impulsive and compulsive, so I can sort of empathize with the idea that that's easy money. It was compelling. He did it again. He walked into the same bank with the same pistol and the same clerk and pulled in, and having driven the same car. And they're like, oh, come on. Like, you're busted. You're done. They're like, we put in a silent alarm. We saw you pull up. He went to jail and served his time. So I grew up with this story in my brain of my grandfather, that he was just this kind of craven nitwit who put his family in danger. And another thing I kept on hearing was like, boy, you really remind me of my dad. Nothing like that self-esteem builder. So anyway, in this time that I spent with my uncle, and my super hip, amazing uncle, told me some very different stories about my grandfather. Now, he was the eldest son. My mom was the only and youngest daughter. So you can imagine those relationships with Howard, the craven nitwit, were different, and they're clouded by just the inaccuracies of memory, the weirdness of time, all those things that sort of make our storytelling what it is, inaccurate, full of all kinds of things. So he tells me a relatively similar story, but with some pretty crucial differences. For one, and this is how I found out I was Irish, by the way, didn't know that. It was the Irish mob who recruited my grandfather to rob this bank. It was an inside job. The bank manager was in on it. We're going to rob this bank. It's an easy, he did owe some money. He did owe some gambling debts. That's a real thing. But they weren't threatening my family. And so he did a favor for friends and probably family, got out of trouble. He did go back. He did go back to the same bank after, not an inside job, and got busted. Also, just technically a craven nitwit. But it painted a very different story to me. It's a subtle but very big difference from a guy who was just, a little impulsive, a little wild, had some kind of questionable family members. So I tell you that story for two reasons. One, to help temper your expectations for the remainder of this presentation, where I come from. Two, I want you to sort of kind of get what can happen in a family storytelling situation. Anyone engaged in, even not just family, people that you're helping preserve a legacy, details matter. And they can kind of help you contextualize where you came from, or kind of confuse and befuddle what you think you're doing. So yeah, the solutions. There's 4 things, I think, and I'm extremely thirsty. Apologize. The water here is delicious. Well done. 4 things I think that really help this storytelling project move along. And we've learned a lot. I mean, this is not what my business partner, the guy back there with the camera, Paul Shelton, what he and I do is not podcasting. It's different. It's just qualitatively, categorically different. Although we do help people make podcasts, we help people with audiobooks, we do all that sort of stuff. To get someone's life story and to honor it and to give them the sort of space they need to tell that story requires a little bit of work on the front end, certainly during and after. So we're going to talk about the before. Oh, yes. Love this place. The before, the during, and the after. So there's 4 things that really matter. Interview techniques, deep listening skills, having the capacity to archive, some sort of way to save that story, and the sense of purpose that this sort of thing can give people. not just the person behind the microphone, but the person asking the question, which I don't know if you can tell had a big impact on me. So we're going to get right into that. And again, if those of you out there playing bingo made some mistakes here, and if you're looking for a story to tell me real soon, hope you're working on that. Somebody's going to get called out for their tight five on what they did wrong, and it went right in spite of it. So interview techniques. This is before you ever sit down and say, okay, here's what we're doing. I'm going to take you through this story. I'm going to record it. There's quite a bit that you can do ahead of time and all four of these things sort of touch one another. So if you want to make sure you get a good story arc out of someone, think of all the elements that are in that. Having just the base facts, just the facts. When were you born? Do you know all your grandparents' names, their full names, their parents' names? I didn't know all that sort of thing. Having those types of questions ahead of time, knowing what the arc of that story is going to be, is huge. It will elevate your storytelling project tremendously, whether it is with a family member, someone who you're worried about reaching the end of their life, someone that you just find interesting and you want to know about. Lay out your story arc first. You do have to be careful to balance your natural curiosity with respect for that person's feelings. I tend to ask every question, often regardless of how uncomfortable it is. I'm learning that discipline to be more respectful of what that person may feel. There's certain things you can find out in the beginning before you ever turn on a microphone. Is there anything you don't want to talk about? And sometimes they'll say, no, I'm an open book. That deserves a follow-up. Chase that down. You will find open books. Sometimes you open to the page like, whoa, you're naked in this one. That's crazy. We should not have that in the story. So big events and small details, like the example with my grandfather. Small details and those big events made a big difference in the context, the way I see that guy. That is possible in all these stories, all these people who have a legacy to tell or to share. Follow up with that. Think about those little tiny details. And this will be a piece with the archiving element. Record all of it. And I say that you can use your telephone. There's so many things out there that will help you organize your thoughts around building a story arc, helping someone tell their story. And even just having a recording of your pre-interview questionnaire, you can plug that into an AI tool. You can workshop it with other people. Just record everything. I say that. We have been in business for a year, my partner and I, and we have already seen when someone says, okay, I want to do this project with my mom. And then mom does not live long enough to attend the recording. So if you're thinking about a project, it is time. Like it's almost already too late. So that's when we tend to think about it. So just record everything. You just never know. How about that? A little bit of a downer. Moving on to listening skills. Listen to me drink this water. Good Lord. Yeah, listening. It's often it's something you're told, shut up and listen. Listening is love. Like to give someone your attention and to really lock in with somebody is an act of love. And it's not to be understated. It's something that you feel. It's extremely reciprocal. The person across from you feels it. You feel it. It's tremendous. There are many, many types of listening. I mean, I'm calling this deep listening, which is essentially empathetic listening. Anybody have a good working definition of empathy? I'm always curious about that. Nobody? I bet you do. Shy. I get it. Same. I look at empathy and I think of it as critical thinking. It's not like feeling sorry. I feel sorry for you. It's like, I want to know how you feel. I want to see the world from your perspective and adjust my questions accordingly. It's a big difference, qualitative difference than an active listening where you're trying to figure something out. You want to know some facts. Empathetic, deep listening is its own thing. And it's you can get some great results. I'm going to show you an example here soon of a result we got. Being patient. How many people in here have been with someone who just burst into tears? Right. What's the first instinct? when someone starts crying? Right? Hug them, offer them something, tell them it's okay. I don't know if it's okay. Let them be. It's big. I mean, maybe just in general, but certainly when you're in a recording context, you don't know what's going through their mind. You know, you may have just asked about their work, but what they're thinking about as a child or someone else, you just don't know. You don't know exactly what's going on with them. So there are many types of ways to let someone know you're still with them, you're still in it, without stopping them from crying. It's okay to cry. Like, it's okay to be mad. All these things are okay. Give them some space. I think that's a hugely important thing, because the next thing they may say could be extremely revealing and something you didn't previously know or had any idea that it was possible that they were going to say. So give them a little space. And yeah, a subtle shift of the head, a hand gesture, just something to let them know you're still with them, but without interrupting. And this all leads to, there's content versus context. Content, tell me about your job, right? This is also a piece of that open versus closed question technique. Tell me about your job. They say, okay, I was an engineer. Okay, what was the most impactful thing that you ever worked on? Open, closed. And what that does, that open-ended question allows the content to come in. That closed-ended question allows you to find an emotional thread to pull on. And you may have to search, depending on the person. Some people just give it to you right away. Some people you got to fish around for them. That's that content versus context. Look for that emotional thread, that thing that really mattered to that person, and you will reveal much more than the fact that, Grandpa did this. Grandpa was like that. Big difference, content versus context. I'm going to give you an example of when all this comes together. This is our good friend, Nurse Nancy. This is only 2 minutes long, but it's worth it.
My name is Nancy Spring. I entered nursing in 1962, and I'm 80, and I'm still nursing. I was involved in hospice coming to the United States. I'm sitting around the table when the definition of nursing adds its lines, assist someone in death and dying with dignity and peace, and no one have to die alone. There's a patient, Luther Hightower. I'm walking down the hall, and this resident confronts me, and he says, "How dare you tell him that he's dying?" And, we're still wearing the nursing uniform with the white nylons and the Oxfords and the hat. And I squared up, and I said, first of all, I didn't tell him, he knows. And then I just stood my ground with, this is healthcare. This is what we do. He knows he's dying and he wants to talk about it. But essentially I was saying, get out of my turf. There were occasions when I held hand when they were expiring. But on 2 occasions, a patient asked me to lay down. I put the bed rail down and laid there next to them. And I felt so secure, so assured, so clear that this was my role. Nursing asks a lot of you. It also gives so much. It allows you to use your full self, your mind, your body, your heart. It's a human connection of the very deepest because it's soulful. It's full of meaning. It is the profession of caring.
That is on our social media. A lot of what we make is for the family, right? So we're not just sharing every last thing that we make. With special permission, we shared that. And I got just anecdotally, that's seen over, I think, 1.5 million views at this point. Thousands of comments. There are people at the UC School of Nursing that are showing that in their orientation video, which is just, it's beautiful because she's such like a soul. You can just see it in her. So what I was trying to say there is that was a tell me about your job situation, right? Pretty open-ended question. And following up those tell me about your hospice. There's some really key things in there that just got these emotional response. The bit she was about to tell you was her laying down with patients as they're passing away. Not okay. Something that they told her she wasn't supposed to do. And she, did the wrong thing, but the right thing. So it was a pretty impactful story. Got a lot of emotion out of her. And it's touched, well over 1 million people, which that's kind of cool, So that's what I'm talking about, that content versus context. And so how do you get all this stuff? There are so many ways nowadays to archive a story. You can just show up and try to write down the Cliff's Notes. But we all have a device that is a flashlight, a compass, a calculator, a camera. It'll help you get lost. It'll help you get found, do all those things. You can use your telephone for most of this. You can just set it down in between yourself and whoever it is you're talking to, face up, and just record the voices. It's not going to sound great, but you'll get something. I have in the past, I think, 5 years, I've bought dozens of these. This is a $25 item that, not everyone can afford what we're doing, and I totally get that. But my business partner and I, it's more important to us that a story is recorded than we make money on it. I just care about it, and I will send these to people all the time. It's $25 on Amazon. It will plug into any kind of phone, and it will function as a great little microphone. Clips on, much like one of these, and you get pretty good audio. And you'll get a nice, clear voice that you can, if you want, later, during post-production polishing, make the thing sound great, or just leave it alone. But there are so many ways just to be able to sort of get a hold of that story with you following up and asking all the great questions and being soulful, actually have it in your possession and be able to share it for the future. There are things that while you're doing that, you want to make sure you, again, are following up with all those details, the names, all that sort of stuff, so that when you're sharing it later, if you're indexing or archiving this stuff, there's some context for people who are going to look at this in the future or listen to it in the future. If you want a higher res thing, of course, you can get better microphones. There's all kinds of prosumer stuff out there that even, you guys out in the field could have with you. But I would say this sort of thing, these little mics, which I can share with you later. You can't have these. Sorry, not that generous. But I will share with you how to get your own. You can use your telephone, prop it up against the book, put it in a shelf. Don't shoot from below, don't shoot from above. I'm conscious about my bald spot. Put it right in their eye level, right in their face. And you'll be extremely glad that you did. They sell cheap little tripods, so many different ways to do it. Should you have the ways and means, you could certainly contract with a company who's professionally adept at doing this sort of thing. I would recommend that. But it's more important, I think, that you just get the story down. And there's so many ways to do that. I mentioned before using AI. I know everybody's got their opinions on AI. I do too. But man, it's useful. We use it all the time to help just workshop. I think about story all the time, structure, story arc, all the circle, the many things that Joseph Campbell had to say about it. And even then, it's like having a partner that you can workshop ideas with. If you've got this data, you plug it in and you can just interrogate all that recording and make a summary, get a transcript. All these things are extremely valuable and helpful to help you in your storytelling project be as good as possible.
One of my favorite stories about television actually was there was an apartment building down half a block that was U-shaped with a court in the middle. And the first family to get television was a guy who owned a photography store. And that's where they sold TVs initially. And he got one that was about 7-inch circle, and he was the only one. So they would bring it out to the court, and there was a half wall, set it on the half wall. And then all the neighbors would contribute extension cords from his apartment so he could reach all the way over. And the stoop culture, where everybody had the folding chairs in front of their buildings, everybody moved over there. You might find 20, 25 people watching Gorgeous George the Wrestler on this 7-inch screen in their chairs. And then as more families acquired TVs, all the outside stuff kind of came to an end. Even for those of us who were kids who were constantly playing outside. until TV came along, and it really had a big, profound effect.
So yeah, you heard what Frank had to say, but you got his character just in the recording of his voice. You have, it's one thing to say, yeah, grandpa was around before TVs, right? That's a fact you can know about your grandpa. It's cool, it's interesting, but to know how he felt about it and what it did to his friends and his network of pals and the neighborhood and that story, to have that is just such like a, to me, I mean, again, radicalized to storytelling dork, it's great. I love that sort of thing. And the context that that will give to a future generation is, I mean, I would love to have that with my grandfather or even my dad. It's interesting. So my father's voice, I'll never hear again. We don't have a voicemail. There's not a videotape. I mean, he was alive through most of it. He died 24 years ago. So, I mean, there was plenty of technology, but we just never thought about doing it. Now there's no excuse. So the sense of purpose. How are we doing on time, by the way? Has anybody got a handle on that? I've completely jumped the shark. Okay. Gosh, I keep hitting that. Sorry. And I promise I work with microphones daily. Sense of purpose. Having a self-transcending sense of purpose is one of the things that I think benefits humankind the most. I'm not talking about a goal like I want to have a lot of money or a cool car or a great house. Those are goals. I'm talking about a sense of purpose and something that transcends the idea of what I want. And these legacy projects do that. Not just for the person on the other side of the microphone, the person being interviewed, but the person conducting that interview. One thing we did not anticipate in our business was the way that the customer who generally hires us would be an adult child, someone who's like, hey, my mom is in her 90s and her 80s. Could you please come do this? When they engage in the beginning of this storytelling project saying, hey, mom, I want to do this thing. Will you do this? The memories that they build around getting us involved are as impactful and meaningful as the finished product. Just that time that they spend together when that person sees, oh, wow, you care so much about me that you're going to bring in these weirdos to my house with all this equipment and have me tell my story. And you've asked me all these questions beforehand and shown all this genuine interest. That's incredible. That sort of thing is, I love seeing that happen. We didn't anticipate that. We just thought we'd make these great videos and great archival things. Having those moments are beyond precious. And it doesn't have to be a pass this down to future generations thing to be valuable to the person you're interviewing. I just had, thanks to Jonelle and through Little Brothers and Friends of the Elderly, had a really interesting experience with an older adult who has no one. She has no children. All of her relatives either don't talk to her or are dead. And it's just her. She lives in this apartment block, has contentious relationships with her neighbors. I mean, it's, her life is, the window's small, and the number of people she engages with is small. And for myself and the volunteers through Little Brothers to show up and take an interest in her story, not just putting her on the microphone, but beforehand, the way that she reacted to having the opportunity to tell that story was just deep. I mean, she sang me a song. She did a performance of a thing she did back in the 70s, this blind swordsman act. I mean, it was wild. It was wild. And that sort of thing is, what even is that? Right? That's not a legacy. She's not carrying who hears it in the future. It's just the act of getting to tell it. It's in the telling where the therapy, the whatever it is, the alchemy happens. Wish I hadn't used that word. I'm about to use it again. Anyhow, so yeah, thinking of yourself and your recording equipment, whatever it is that you have, whether it's these little things or if you've got high-end stuff, as an ear or an eye of a future person is a valuable way to look at these storytelling projects and what your role might be. And you guys are all in the room with some of the wisest people in our communities, our elders. And that's a tremendous opportunity, I think, to to learn something about yourself, how you feel about the world. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to agree with what they say. You can learn a lot about life by knowing what not to do. I've met plenty of examples of that. So, Grandpa's legacy, old Howard, wild man, he and my grandma Hattie had 4 kids. And those 4 kids had anywhere between 2 and 7 children apiece. Those children, my siblings and cousins, are all breeders. I'm not. They've made substantial contributions to the carrying on of the species and the family name. That's my dog again, by the way. All these photos. I'm raising a geriatric myself. But yeah, what I know about my mom, right? I've interviewed my mom. I've had a very long, heartfelt discussion with her about her work. Like I said, a hospice nurse. And what I'm going to be able to pass on to all the people who will survive her, not my dog, of course, but is, it's one thing to know that my mom was a hospice nurse, that she was a good nurse, that she was a grandma, that she did these things. That's content. What you don't know and wouldn't know unless you heard her talk about it is that she could do her own form of alchemy and turn grief into compassion. That sort of thing you're not going to just get out of someone telling you about your great grandma or your grandma. If you can hear her say it in her own words, it's invaluable. So I highly suggest if you're out there in the world and you're doing this, you're meeting these wonderful older adults, these elders in the community, take the time, just ask, And if you don't want to do it, obviously, we're your guys. Thank you.